Good afternoon, folks, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I still have quite a few folks logging in, so we're going to give them all a few minutes, and we will go ahead and get started in about 2-3 minutes here. Thanks. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Building an Intelligent Process Automation Practice to Digitize Document-Based Workflows. My name is Jeremy Stinson, and I will be your moderator. I work here on the marketing team at Indico, and I'm excited to be hosting today's session. Before we get started with today's webinar, I wanted to take care of a few housekeeping items first. First, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session. We'll be sure to send a follow-up note after today's webinar with a link to the recording. We've also added some attachments, which are available through the attachment tab at the bottom of your screen. There you can find today's deck and other related content. Next, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have a question for our speakers, please feel free to send it through the Ask a Question tab at the bottom of the screen. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. Next, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Tom Wild brings 25 years of experience in solving the complex problems of digital content to the role of CEO of Indico. Prior to joining Indico, Tom was the Chief Product Officer at C-Sense, a leading data management provider, and founder of Ramp, an enterprise video content management company. Tom also held senior roles at FastSearch, Miva Systems, and Lycos. He has extensive experience with company building and venture-backed startups and holds an MBA in entrepreneurial management from Wharton. Keith Bowman is Indico's VP of Alliances. Prior to joining Indico, Keith served as the VP of Alliances at Blue Prism, the global leader in RPA, where he was responsible for leading and growing Blue Prism's alliance with Accenture and Avanade in North America. Keith has also held senior roles at AT&T, Cognitio, and Motorola Solutions. So without further ado, I will toss it over to Tom to get us started.
Thank you, Jeremy. So as Jeremy mentioned, we're going to talk today about building up a new practice area around unstructured content. As many of the attendees here, from the looks of the registrations, have had a lot of success building out RPA-based practices. We want to talk today about building out an IPA-based practice. So let's start by framing the challenge here. The challenge within the enterprise is the amount of unstructured that flows through these companies. Historically, structured data has gotten all of the attention and all of the development, but the majority of content that flows through an enterprise is actually unstructured. Further, Google estimates that only about 2% of that is leveraged by today's analytics and content-based technologies. And that means there's a lot of risk and opportunity buried in this unstructured content that customers are very eager to try to solve, especially once they've begun that journey down the automation trail. And Indico is oriented around solving this problem. And historically, this has been a difficult problem to solve. At its essence, customers are looking to turn documents into data. In order to make documents and unstructured content accessible, they need to be able to create structured, canonical, confidence scored data payloads from this river of documents that flows through the enterprise. Once they have this structured data, they can unlock this value and integrate it with all of the downstream platforms that they've already put into place. The problem as we encounter it generally at the customer is one of a sort of assembly line of manual processes. These are people-driven, see it and key it type behaviors. And that means because the majority of these tasks are being accomplished by people, they're inconsistent. They tend to have an individual understanding of the workflow rather than institutional understanding. And that means that there's risk and expense embedded in these workflows. It can be audit risk, compliance risk, and also scalability risk. So the problem with this approach is there's never an economy of scale here. The only way you grow these, the throughput or the capacity of these kinds of workflows is to add more people to these processes. So there's never that moment of economies of scale. An IPA, intelligent process automation, is really the next wave of automation. If you have had success building an automation practice as a system integrator, you'll find that as customers have picked off a lot of the low-hanging fruit with RPA, they're ready to explore some of the advanced use cases, which typically revolve around unstructured content and documents. The evolution here is one from the traditional sort of OCR-based approaches, which has been around for 25 years. Those are the sort of COFAX and ABI approaches of the world. That evolved into RPA, where RPA really excelled in dealing with structured data. So if you could fit it in a database or a spreadsheet, you could apply an RPA process to automate a lot of the rote or manual tasks that existed within the enterprise or connecting disparate systems together. Machine learning arrived and began to make sense of some of this structured data with these ML-based approaches, which has then evolved into intelligent process automation. The big distinction between the two being primarily deep learning. Deep learning has unlocked a whole new raft of use cases around sort of cognitive processes, things that involve decisioning. So deep learning and IPA have disrupted things like machine translation, natural language processing, image and video analysis. Neural networks are fundamentally a breakthrough in technologies, unlocking this whole new set of use cases around IPA. And what you'll find across your customer base is this really is this next wave of use cases they're trying to unlock and represents a huge opportunity for you to grow your practice around IPA. Let's look at what's gone on historically here. So it's not that document-based workflows are a new problem. This is a decades-old problem. What we've seen historically is the way to solve this had to be some form of rule or template. If it was a rule, it was regular expressions, controlled vocabularies, taxonomies. If it was templates, it was OCR, zonal templating for things like invoices. These approaches do work if the problem is very narrowly defined. The reason we've used these techniques historically is the computer has not been good at understanding the critical component in understanding unstructured, which is context. Context drives meaning. Keywords actually don't drive meaning. Position on the page actually doesn't drive meaning. Context drives meaning. Suddenly, with deep learning and neural networks, the computer is able to understand this context and suddenly solve a whole new set of problems. So when we look at understanding documents, you have to think about documents as living on a spectrum. So on the far right-hand side, you have highly structured documents. These are things like government forms or payroll forms, things like that, that don't vary much from document to document. You know what you're going to get. In the middle, you have things like invoices, bills of lading, purchase orders. There's some semblance to structure, but not reliably so. And if you're talking about invoices, they're really like snowflakes, right? Every single vendor has their own flavor, and you end up creating hundreds and hundreds of templates to try to understand invoices. On the far left, you have purely unstructured documents. These are policies, contracts, government filings, and things of that nature, where no amount of templates or rules can economically solve that end of the spectrum. And so what you need to solve the complete document intake and understanding problem is a cognitive approach, an intelligent approach. And that's what Indico brings to the table. So rather than having to piece together a whole set of different applications for your customers to try to solve their unstructured workflows, Indico represents a complete solution for the whole spectrum. And from a ROI standpoint, it's not that dissimilar to any automation project. Customers are still trying to decrease cycle times, redeploy resources, drive efficiencies, wring risks out of the equation. And you're able to do that with a cognitive approach by being able to scale the decisioning component of understanding unstructured content. You're able to unlock this efficiency. And I think the pandemic has really, across the automation spectrum, really shined a light on this. Customers are, especially in things like banking, finance, and healthcare, very concerned in the future about how do we get more productivity from the resources we have? How do we accelerate the turnaround time of these tasks we're trying to execute, both for competitive advantage and just to optimize the efficiency of the business operations? And so the pandemic has really driven strong interest in automation broadly, and more specifically around these new intelligent process automation use case candidates. From a use case perspective, IPA solves a range of use cases you find across, and these are sort of generic in nature, but across several different tiers of the organization. As RPA has attempted to really skim sort of the low-hanging fruit around structured data, you see that in the back office, this new set of use cases that basically depends on the understanding of documents flowing through all of these use cases in question. So audit planning, compliance, contract analytics, customer onboarding and support, contract process automation, vendor reconciliation, claims. These are types of use cases that span the middle and back office of these big enterprise organizations. Some of them shared in common by any big organization, like shared services, invoice, procurement to pay, et cetera. Some of them specific insurance, claims, banking, trade type workflows, healthcare, things like EHRs, and life sciences. You're talking about things like clinical trials. So all of these have tremendous amounts of unstructured use cases that can be leveraged as part of building your practice. So let's talk about what's unique here about Indico. What have we done to disrupt this market, and why can we help you build this practice successfully? So as I mentioned before, we feel like we are the only solution in the market that can handle the full spectrum of structured, semi-structured, and unstructured documents. We also support image analysis as well. That's become more and more frequent, a part of these use cases around things like property and casualty claims and other types of use cases where images and documents live together. The Indico Advantage is really based on 4 pillars. The first being our orientation around the process owner. When we started to build Indico, one of the things we saw as a gap in the market was most of the machine learning platforms were primarily oriented towards the data scientist. And we looked at it and said, if training data is the biggest challenge in using machine learning and deep learning in particular, capturing high quality training data is vital. And it turns out that the data scientist doesn't really have possession of that subject matter expertise. It's really the process owner. The data scientist with Indico can partner with the process owner using our application to solve these problems. But fundamentally, we face the process owner and help capture their expertise with the use case and turn that into this machine learning understanding. Secondly, you'll see that quite distinctly, we don't rely on, as I've mentioned, templates or rule-based approaches. This is a deep learning technique whereby deep learning learns from examples, uniquely so. If you show it enough examples, it understands the problem and is able to automate these processes. And Indico's approach does not rely on templates or rules, which are brittle and tedious to put in place and even more expensive to maintain. We also have a fundamental belief that if we're going to use AI, there should be no black boxes. A legitimate criticism of deep learning is that it's a black box. I mean, by definition, within deep learning and neural networks are these things called hidden layers. So by nature, these are difficult to explain in terms of why they're making the decisions they make. Indico has built from the ground up a complete set of AI explainability features to make sure that there's never a black box as part of our product. Customers are able to at all times introspect and remediate these machine learning models they build within the Indico platform, as well as quickly identify any mistakes a workflow is making and remediate those mistakes using our award-winning human-in-the-loop interface. And then fourth, we believe we are world experts in applying deep learning towards natural language processing and unstructured documents, and with our transfer learning technology can bring that to you to help you differentiate your offerings with customers that you've already started to enable with automation and enable that journey they're taking. Let's talk for a minute about transfer learning. So as I mentioned, the power of deep learning is that it learns from examples, different than templates or rules. It learns from examples. That's the good news. It's a very smart learner. The bad news is it's a very slow learner. You need to show it potentially tens of thousands of labeled examples before it becomes proficient, before it learns to solve the task that you put in front of it. And that's just not tenable for a major enterprise. They don't have the time or the resources or the training data, frankly, to put together 10 to 100,000 labeled examples. So we knew we had to solve that problem if we were going to apply deep learning to unstructured content. What we did is we went out and built a huge generalized contextual understanding of language. We ingested about 500 million publicly available documents to broadly teach the machine the vital missing piece of this equation, which is context. Think of this as a giant contextual bootstrap that we use to apply deep learning to give the customer the ability to build custom machine learning models. We call them docbots. And if you illuminate the upper left there, Jeremy, we have about 200 labeled examples. So by uploading 200 examples, labeling those in the Indico application, you're able to create this custom model. It transfers from the generalized model, this vastly expanded contextual understanding, and makes that custom model behave as if you'd labeled 10 to 100,000 examples. So effectively sort of tricks the custom model into thinking that it's been given much more training data than it actually has. The next problem we knew we had to solve was, okay, how do we capture that high quality training data, even though we only need 200 examples? And that's the point I was making about facing the process owner. Indico IPA is a point and click application that faces the process owner. They're able to upload these samples, label them, understand the model's performance, and orchestrate them into a workflow without any code or without any knowledge of data science. So this is a no-code data science, no-code automation platform that has full extensibility with our GraphQL API. So you, of course, can extend it with code if you wish. And that has been a fundamental breakthrough here. This allows process owners to move at their own speed and automate these processes much more quickly. The opportunity for our partners on the system integration side is tying all of this together with the customer's existing platforms of record, with their existing RPA interfaces, and with building up and planning these workflows and the model building process itself. So there's a tremendous service and consultancy opportunity here built into the partner channel with Indico. Lastly, most of our customers want to deploy this on-premise or in their own cloud. And that is completely enabled with Indico. It is a microservices Docker Kubernetes architecture. Transfer learning means it's about 8 times more efficient than traditional machine learning approaches to this problem. So the operational costs are also a big advantage here, especially because customers generally want to host this themselves. When you think about accuracy and performance, this is a legitimate question that we get when you're thinking about using AI. AI is a probabilistic technology. Unlike RPA, which is a deterministic technology, it gets it correct or gets it incorrect. AI is probabilistic. There is a spectrum of predictions ranging from 100% accurate to less than 100% accurate. So how do you think about accuracy and performance when trying to solve unstructured use cases? Well, first you have the traditional templates and rules. And the challenge here that we've talked about is the requirement to build these templates and then maintain them, or build rules and then maintain them, means you get this very jaggy performance curve. You're always chasing these errors and trying to keep up with them to reach some kind of workflow proficiency. When it comes to just traditional machine learning, as I mentioned, you need so much training data. It takes a tremendous amount of time and effort and expertise to reach any kind of proficiency with these machine learning models to solve unstructured. Indico transfer learning delivers sort of the best of all worlds. You get rapid time to value With only a couple hundred examples, you can build custom models in a matter of days. It self-learns as it encounters edge cases. It learns from those in a closed loop and is able to power back up towards proficient and accurate predictions. And the cost of ownership is very manageable because you get to time to value so quickly, and you're not constantly having to manually intervene and chase the performance of the models that you build. From a deployment perspective, let's look at sort of a 500-foot view of how you deploy a use case within Indico. Typically you're dealing with some kind of document intake. Most often we're dealing with scanned PDFs. The challenge with scanned PDFs, obviously, is there's almost no metadata that you can derive from a scanned PDF, an image of a PDF. So oftentimes we're doing a document classifier. We have OCR built into our platform, so customers don't need to license OCR separately. So as those documents flow in on our OCR, the first step to building a workflow is Indico Teach. Indico Teach is a point-and-click interface whereby you upload your 200 samples and you literally just highlight those samples with the attributes that you're wishing to extract from those documents. So you can see those tiny colored tiles on the right. Those would be the attribute categories. I simply highlight my samples with those attributes, and with that, it learns how to make that extraction very robust, and it can tolerate a variety of templates and layouts and vocabulary. That, again, is the key advantage of transfer learning. Oftentimes, when you're building a workflow, you need to orchestrate a series of models together, and Indico Conduct is sort of a mini sort of automation workflow built within our product. It's quite common for this to live in tandem with an RPA workflow, so you can think of this as a sub workflow. With Indico Conduct, you're able to chain a series of custom models together. You might chain a document classifier, a page classifier, a content extractor, a normalization routine, and then a validation routine. Those are organized and depicted in Indico Conduct. You can also set confidence thresholds in Indico Conduct, and those confidence thresholds determine which of the production documents end up in our human in the loop station, which is Indico Review. Indico Review, again, is a point-and-click, SME-friendly interface. You see the production document on the screen. You see the thumbnails for the pages in the document. You see the predicted values generated both on the document and in the right-hand rail. You can easily point-and-click, jump between the predictions and the document itself to make corrections, to add missing values. And once you've validated the fields in that document, you're able to submit them into the downstream system. Very importantly, any corrections you make in our human in the loop interface feed the staggered loop. We call it a staggered loop because we don't feed production models. We only feed the staged models for AI governance reasons. You don't want to feed a production model. That is a governance red flag generally. You determine whether or not your staged model is outperforming the production model using Indico Explain. As I mentioned, Indico Explain is the market's first point-and-click interface for introspecting custom machine learning models. Traditionally, this is something only data scientists could do, and most automation products in the market had just a black box approach to this. They would tell you that if they're using machine learning, don't worry about it, it's all pre-built, you don't have to understand how it's doing its job. We disagree with that. We think at all times you should have full explanation as to every decision the machine is making. And once you find that your staged loop is your staged model is outperforming your production model, you're able to flip those, capture those improvements, and drive this sort of continuous learning of an Indico workflow. Great. So that's the Indico approach, differentiator, and product. As I hope you've seen here, this is a strong way to build up the practice and to extend your RPA success. I'm going to turn it over to Keith now to talk about the mechanics of partnering with Indico and why this is such a compelling opportunity to extend your business. So I'll turn it to Keith.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, terrific. First of all, I'd like to highlight a few of the key reasons to consider a partnership with Indico. As Tom mentioned earlier, Indico's IPA is the market's only complete solution when it comes to solving challenges with any unstructured data process. Indico's unique approach using transfer learning and enabling citizen data scientists greatly reduces time to value. And from a services perspective, the services opportunity is really a natural extension of a business model that includes advising, deploying, and scaling automation for clients. So this is particularly true when you consider supporting an RPA strategy. And third, our goal is to ensure joint success via a comprehensive support model. We provide live training for sales and technical enablement, as well as mentoring for initial engagements. This is all supported with access to recorded content, documents, marketing material, and other resources. What we don't do as part of our partner model is simply sign on the dotted line and point you to a partner portal. So we're all about comprehensive support. Next slide. Thank you. And there are multiple ways to partner with Indico, and we'll work with you to identify the scenario that best fits your business model. Our referral partners have somewhat of a limited role when it comes to sales, deployment, and support. The referral partners identify and select use cases, as well as provide level 1 support. Indico, in this scenario, Indico will provide sales training. In a reseller scenario, comes with a bit more responsibility. The partner is responsible for executing the entire sales cycle, deploying and supporting the product. The Indico team will provide sales and technical training and will mentor initial deployments as part of the enablement process. When provided as a managed service, the partner agrees to host and operate Indico IPA. We see this as really as a bulk license purchase that would support multiple clients. And in this scenario, the Indico team will provide sales and technical and DevOps training to ensure success. Next slide. So with the typical customer engagement model, we see distinct phases with each client engagement. In the qualification phase, we work with clients to select a use case, review the training data, model a business case, and deliver a workshop or a POC. And we do this obviously in coordination, with our partner. The commercial phase includes capacity modeling, proposals, statement of work, and subscription, the subscription agreement. And the onboarding phase is really about execution. We've identified the training data, integrated data, and workflows, build models, and then move into production. And this is a sample of the average timeline associated with onboarding and deployment. It's generally about a 12-week process for the initial use case. Subsequent use cases will take about 4 weeks to complete. And these timelines can vary depending on the complexity of the use case, but this illustrates an example of a sample timeline for onboarding and deployment. Okay, over to you, Jeremy.
Great, thanks, Keith. So I think we're going to spend some time getting to some Q&A. I see a few questions here bubbling up in the chat window. The first question, I think I'll toss over to you, Tom, is what are the most common use cases you're seeing where RPA is combined with IPA?
Yeah, that's a good question and a frequent one. I think that what we see is customers typically view RPA and IPA as highly compatible, and oftentimes they're shopping for them independently. However, during the deployment phase, it's not uncommon to want to hook them together. So popular uses of RPA in conjunction with IPA would be things like using RPA as your upstream connector to things like email servers or content management systems or CRM systems as a conduit to flow that content over to an Indico workflow, and then pick it up on the other side and inject that structured data into a downstream system, again, like CRM or BI or ERP or those kinds of things. So very commonly, we see them tied together like that.
Great, and kind of a follow-up question to that, and Keith, I'll let you take this one. Does Indico have any partnerships currently with the three big RPA players, UiPath, Blue Prism, or Automation Anywhere?
Yes, we do have a relationship, a formal relationship with UiPath, and we have completed out-of-the-box integration with UiPath, and we're currently in discussion with Automation Anywhere as well as Blue Prism.
Great, thanks. This next question, I think I'll let you take, Tom. One of our attendees is asking if we could talk through what our licensing structure looks like.
Yeah, so we license the product based on two primary attributes: document volume processed in a given period, monthly or yearly, and seat licenses. The reason we have these two attributes as drivers for the licensing structure is we want to make sure that we can accommodate sort of two distinct types of use cases, which is what we see in the market. On the one hand, you have very high volume use cases like things like claims processing, where the business model really needs to be oriented around the document volume. Then you have very low volume use cases, but very complex use cases, things like ISDA, contract analytics, policy analytics, customer onboarding in the commercial banking space. These are typically lower volume, but very complex tasks. And that's where the seat licenses comes more into play. So those two things combined together allow flexibility to create a license structure that meets the needs of any kind of customer use case.
Great. This next question is actually a pretty interesting one that I'll let you take, Tom. It's asking, or I should say the attendee is asking, today with our focus on RPA, who we engage with internally at prospects and end customers is usually Director of RPA, VP of RPA, or something similar. With intelligent process automation, whom are you seeing having ownership of those types of projects at your prospective customers?
Yeah, there's sort of two personas that seem to come up most frequently. The first would be a process leader for a particular function. For example, claims processing at a major insurance company. That's generally a big enough process that there's actually a transformation person attached to that process, and they're out there seeking ways to drive more efficiencies out of the use case. The other persona we see more frequently now is someone from the Automation Center of Excellence. 2 years ago, broadly speaking, there weren't too many automation COEs. There were some kind of AI COE or business innovation or things like that, but they've really coalesced around this Automation Center of Excellence. And they're typically driving a more corporate-wide view of how to solve a category of use cases. And in our case, they engage with us to solve this category of document intake and understanding.
Great. And I think this is probably the last question we have. And I'll let you answer this one, Tom, but any integration or any plans to integrate with Microsoft Power Platform or Win Automation?
Yeah, I think we see the Power Platform very similar to the RPA vendors. And I think that, with true Microsoft tradition, they've played a bit of a waiting game to see the segment develop and now have decided to enter and make a move with the Softmotive acquisition. So we would see them very much like an RPA integration, and would say that would be on our list to look at here in the second half of the year for sure.
Great, thanks. Well, I think that does it for the Q&A section of today's webinar. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, we will follow up afterwards with a link to the recording if you'd like to share it with folks on your team. And if there were any questions that we did not get to today, we'll be sure to follow up with those afterwards as well. So thanks again for everyone attending today, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon. Thanks, folks.
Thanks.